Good morning, friends. Welcome to the SIP program. And as we have told you that we will be covering both the static part and the current part. So we'll start with the polity static part, and polity will also cover the current part, but in this lecture we'll be covering the static part. So what we'll do is, we will not teach you whole Lakshmikant. What we'll tell you is that in all the chapters of Lakshmikant, we'll highlight the important areas which you need to study, which cannot be missed at any cost. Also, we'll tell you important facts which you could miss, or the facts which you don't pay much attention to. And when the question is asked on that fact in the exam, you become confused. So our idea is to make you study smart. That is our idea, right? So we'll start with the first chapter of Lakshmikant, which is making of constitution. So constitution, as you know, that you might have seen that program Samvidhan. It is, I guess, an 8 or 9 episode program, but right now you don't have time for that. The idea is to get the basic things about how the constitution was formed. So as you know that Constituent Assembly was formed after the Cabinet Mission Plan, and in that Constituent Assembly there were 389 seats, and out of those 389 seats, 296 seats were allocated to British India, and 93 seats were given to the princely states. So, out of these 296 seats, the method of representation was different for both the seats in British India and in the princely states. In the British India, the members were actually elected by the members of Provincial Assembly. So the people who got elected to the Central Constitution Assembly in the British India seats, they were elected by the members or the representatives of Provincial Assembly. It's just like how we elect people to Rajya Sabha. It was the same method of election, right? So if a question comes in UPSC which asks you that members of Constituent Assembly were directly elected, and that's wrong. They were indirectly elected by the members of the Provincial Assembly, and the method was same as we have in the Rajya Sabha. It was based on the single transferable vote system. Sorry, it was different. So they are elected by members of Provincial Assembly. These were nominated by the head of the princely states. Right? They were elected and they were nominated by the head of the princely states. And the seats were allocated in 3 categories. There was 3 categories how the seats were allocated. The first category were Muslim reserved seats. The second category was Sikh reserved seats. And the third category was general category, which included all other or remaining categories. So in the Muslim reserve category, only the Muslims can get elected. In the Sikh reserve, the Sikhs, and in general, all the other categories, Hindus, Christians, they were elected. So one historical fact was that earlier the members of princely state, they did not join the Constituent Assembly because they were still expecting that they could have a future which is free of India and which will be free of the British imperialism or the British paramountcy. So that's why initially when the Constituent Assembly was formed, the members of princely state did not join the assembly. So what happened was that when they met, they first elected an interim president, which is Sachidanand Sinha. He was the interim president of the Constituent Assembly, and after that, they appointed a full-time president who was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the chairman of the Constituent Assembly, while the vice president was S.G. Mukherjee. I think vice president, the name is not important, so I don't think you need to remember. Next is major committees. In this chapter, the next part which is important is the part of major committees. The list, the whole list is given in Lakshmikant, I guess in the 4th or 5th page of this chapter, and that's why I don't think I need to repeat here, I don't need to waste time here. You should read that list very, very carefully because a question has been asked before and could be asked next year also, right? Next we will go into is Indian Independence Act. So when Mountbatten came to India, he came up with a plan that India would be divided into Hindu majority Pakistan and Hindu majority India and Muslim majority Pakistan. And after that, the British Parliament, they passed an act which is known as Indian Independence Act 1947. And this act gave 3 powers to the Constituent Assembly, or it changed the working of Constituent Assembly. First, the assembly was made a sovereign body and it could frame any kind of constitution it want. So there will be no interference, they were not under the control of the Queen. It was made completely sovereign and it was given power to make any kind of constitution it wanted. So Constituent Assembly was made sovereign. Next was that assembly also became a legislative body. Which means that because at that time the first elections in India took place in 1952. So for the 5 years time between 47 to 52, the Constituent Assembly worked both as a constitution making body and it also functioned as a legislative body. So when it functioned as a legislative body, the speaker was G.V. Mavlankar. And when it functioned as a constituent body, constitution making body, the chairman was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Right? And B.R. Ambedkar's role was to draft. His role was, he was the head of the drafting committee. So every time the legislative, this Constitution Assembly used to sit, they used to talk on proposals, and based on the recommendations of the Constitution Assembly, Ambedkar used to draft, and he first prepared the initial draft, then they were like rounds of draft prepared, and later a full or the final draft was prepared by Ambedkar, which was adopted as a constitution by our Constitution Assembly. And the third change which it did was the Muslim League members who were part of, which would be in Pakistan, withdrew from the Constitution Assembly. Right? Because then a different Constitution Assembly of Pakistan was formed and they became members of that Constitution Assembly. So Muslim League members of those part which were not part of India withdrew. Right? Next we move to is the this fact that Constitution was adopted on November 26, 1949. Right? And preamble was enacted after the Constitution was formed. right? Because preamble reflected the philosophy of the constitution. That is why first the constitution was formed, and after that preamble was adopted, right? One very important fact which you should remember for your exam is that some provisions of the constitution pertaining to citizenship, elections, provisional parliament, they came into force on 26 November 1949 itself. Right? And rest of them came into force on 26 January 1950. Right? So if a question comes in the exam which says that the Constitution of India was enforced, all Constitution of India was enforced on 1950, on 26 January 1950, then this statement is wrong, because some part of the Constitution it was enforced or it came into force on 26 November 1949 itself, right? So this is all which is important in the first chapter of the Lakshmikant. Rest, the last thing, the criticism of the Constitution, is good for your mains exam, but it has no relevance for your prelims exam. So you can skip that part. The most important part of this chapter is to remember the method of election, how the members were elected, and second is important committees and its chairman. These things are most important. Do not kind of skip it at any cost. We now go to the next chapter, which is salient features of the Constitution. So in this salient features of Constitution, this looks very simple, but it contains some words, some lines on which UPSC is asking question every year. So most of the people skip this chapter, think we know what is republic, we know what is that, what is this, and that is why this chapters are important. But they are asking questions on specific words, specific lines. That is why it is important for your exam. So we'll deal with few salient features which are not given in any other chapter. Rest we'll deal in the most specific chapter, like secularism, like citizenship. These things we'll deal in the specific chapters. Some of the important points or important features for this for Constitution. First, it is lengthiest. Second is that it is drawn from various sources. Now, here you have to remember from which country which part is taken. Like directive principle is taken from Ireland. So in that way, emergency provision is taken from Weimar Republic. In that way, you have to remember the 9-10 countries from which a specific part of the Constitution is taken from. Very important part of the very important part, probably the most important part of the chapter. Cannot miss it at any cost. I would make it a star. It would be blasphemous if you would skip this thing, right? Third is that it is a federal system with a unitary bias. Now again, one important fact in this third point is that the word federation has nowhere been mentioned in the Constitution. Nowhere a word, because the Constitution says that India is a union of states. Article 1 says that India is a union of states. So when the Constitution of US was formed, it gave the power to the units or the states to secede. We did not give any power. We have divided the states for administrative convenience. That is why we have given central government more power than we gave the state government. Because as you know, at that time India was the partition happened. Plus, the constitution makers knew this thing that whenever Delhi remained weak, whenever the central government remained weak, India always has to face instability. You can check it from like post Gupta phase. You can check it like Timur invaded India when we were in the post Tughlaq phase. They were weak emperors. Then Nadir Shah invaded when we had like later Mughals. The British invaded, and all these people, Ahmad Shah Abdali, all of them invaded when India had a weak central government. That is why, to ensure that this thing never happens in future, we gave center more powers. That is why we have a feature of federation we have a federal system with a unitary bias. Fourthly, is that we have a parliamentary form of government. Right? How is Indian government different? How is the Indian parliament different from the parliament in Britain? Is that the British parliament is a sovereign body, it is supreme. Right? If it passes any law, the judiciary in Britain cannot do, even if it's because the constitution in Britain is unwritten. Therefore, they can pass any law they want. Right? And the role of judiciary is limited. In India, the parliament is not supreme because we have the concept of judicial review. We have anything can be kind of any law or any act which is against the spirit of constitution could be declared null and void by our judiciary. Fifth feature is that we have a synthesis of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. So, the main component of this point is that we lie between US and UK. While in UK you have very strong parliament, very weak judiciary. In US you have weak parliament or weak kind of Congress, and you have very, very strong judiciary, because judiciary follows what you use as a concept of due process of law. Which means that if Congress passes any act which is against the spirit of the constitution, then that act, that law could be declared null and void by the judiciary. India started with what you call as procedural established by law. We started with this, where the role of judiciary was limited. It has to check that the process, how the law is passed, is fine or not. If that is fine, Parliament is given power to pass any kind of law. That was started with this. But during the Maneka Gandhi case, India also transformed into this, the first one, it is due process of law. And our judiciary also became very, very strong. So when the constitution was first formed, we did not give much power to judiciary, but during the due course, judiciary, we moved closer to the US model, which is the due process of law. Sixth is integrated and independent judiciary. So we have a single system of courts in India, which means that High Court enforces both the state laws and the central laws, right? But in US, we don't have an integrated or single system of judiciary, because there the state or the High Courts only deals with the state laws, and the Supreme Court deals with the central laws. So there is no chain of commands that first the case will go to district court, then High Court, then Supreme Court. No, it's not like that. The High Courts are supreme in themselves. In the state laws, after a high court has given any decision, you cannot appeal to any other court, right? Same way Supreme Court is supreme in the central law. But we have a hierarchical chain where the case will pass from district court to high court to Supreme Court to president, right? And one more thing, that Supreme Court of India is the guardian of the Constitution. This is once this question is also asked in the exam. So Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution. Next is fundamental rights. So fundamental question is always asked. I mean, 2 or 3 times it is asked in last 5-6 years. So fundamental rights in detail will deal in the fundamental rights chapter. But some things which are there in this chapter is that it promotes political democracy in India. Right? And secondly, it is justifiable in nature. UPSC always plays with that, justifiable, not justifiable, always they play. So they are justifiable in nature. Thirdly, they are not absolute. They are subjected to reasonable restriction. Fourthly, they are not sacrosanct and can be repealed by Parliament through a Constitutional Amendment Act. But however, in the Keshwan Bharati case, the court has explicitly said that the Parliament has the power to amend any section of the Constitution, but they should not be violating the basic structure of the Constitution. That is what Keshwan Bharati case the Supreme Court has said. Next we go to is DPSP, which is Director Principles. Again we deal in detail in that chapter, but for this you can know that they enforce social and economic democracy in India, right? Next is fundamental duties. We'll deal in the 10th chapter in detail. Secular state is another basic feature or important feature of the Constitution. United or universal adult franchise is another important component. Single citizenship will deal in the citizenship chapter. Now again, one more thing which you should remember in this chapter, very important, is at the end of the chapter there were schedules of Constitution given. Like one schedule 1 deals with this, schedule 2 deals with this, schedule 3 deals with this. UPSC has asked this question twice in last 6 years. So therefore, you have to remember this by heart. This is the most important thing in this chapter. The schedule, name of the schedules and what does it contain. Second important thing in this chapter is about these sources, like from which source a part of Constitution is drawn from, right? 2 things most important in the chapter: the various sources from which chapters or provisions of constitutions are borrowed from. Second thing, the name of all the schedules and what does it contain. Rest I have told already. Which is citizenship. Now for people who have been reading this, or when I was preparing myself, this was the most confused chapter of the Lakshmikant, because there are so many dates there: 47, 51, 92, 2004. It's very tough to remember. Plus there were thin differences between what is the OCI, what is PIO, what is nationalization, what is registration. A lot of things were, it was the most complicated chapter of the Lakshmikant. So my idea in this chapter would be to go beyond the details and tell you in detail things about on which a question could be asked by the UPSC, and things which you should not skip at any cost. So after you will be done with this, I don't think you will be required to read this chapter, right? Because my idea would be to include all the important things, facts, concepts of this chapter, which are important for your prelims exam. So we'll start with the first thing, which is what is different between rights of citizens and rights of aliens in India? Again, a question was once asked on that. So there are some articles, there are some fundamental rights which are given to both aliens and the normals and the citizens of that country, while there are some rights, some fundamental rights which are only given to the citizens of India, they are not given to the foreigners. So Article 15, which is right against discrimination, it is only given to the citizens, right? It's only given to the citizens. Then Article 16, which is equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. This is again given to only citizens. So you cannot, a foreigner cannot become IS in this country. You have to be citizen of this country to appear for the UPSC exam, right? Next is Article 19. So the freedom, right to freedom is also only given to citizens. So you cannot reside anywhere in this country if you are from Israel or if you are from UK. But as an Indian, except probably J&K and few northeastern states, if I want, I'm in Delhi, if I want next state that I want to settle in Chennai, nobody will stop me. But if I'm a foreigner, I cannot stay in India continuously. Till my visa is still there, I can stay in Chennai and in Delhi, but once my visa gets expired, I have to return back. Next is Article 29 and 30, which are cultural and educational rights. They are also given to only the citizens of this country. So if I am a minority and I am from Saudi Arabia, and I think that my culture is getting destroyed, and I am probably a refugee in India. If I am a refugee in India, or let's not take Saudi Arabia, let's take Afghanistan, and I think that I am a refugee in India, I'm living in for my 15 years, my language Pashto is getting destroyed, it's getting extinct, and therefore I need state protection. And as a matter of right, because I'm a minority, I have a right to establish and administer my own institution. You cannot have that. Because you are not a citizen of this country. You are a refugee. You are not a citizen. If you are a citizen of this country and you feel that, okay, I should have the freedom to establish and administer my own institution, I can go for the state. The state can also support me for that because I am a citizen of this country. So here lies the difference between a citizen and a foreigner. Next is right to vote and eligibility to hold certain public office. So right to vote is again given only to the citizens. And which are the rights which are given to both citizens and the aliens? So they are Article 14, which is equality before law. Look, this is very natural. I mean, if I have committed any crime, if I have committed a murder is a murder, whether it is committed by a citizen or a foreigner. You cannot say that because the murder is committed from a guy from US, therefore I will give him death penalty, and because it's done by Indian, I will give him 7 years jail. It cannot happen like that. The judiciary is equal for everyone, right? Article 14, Article 20. 21, 22, they are also given to both citizens and aliens. So this is right against arbitrary arrest. It's right to freedom of life and liberty. These are very natural human rights. I mean, these are natural human rights. You cannot discriminate on the basis of nationality, right? Because we are a democracy and we are a Gandhian democracy. We cannot deprive any person, any human from these basic human rights, right? Then Article 23 to 24, these are also right against exploitation. This is again a basic human rights. Here also you cannot discriminate. And Article 25 to 28, which is freedom of religion. This is also given only to, this is also given to both, because again this is again a basic human right. Then right, yeah, so these are the rights which are given to both aliens and citizens. These articles are only given to, these rights are only given to citizens. Remember this, very important for the exam. Next we'll deal with is the constitutional provisions with respect to citizenship in India. Article 5 to Article 11 contains provisions with regard to citizenship in India. But one very important fact with respect to prelims is that the constitution contains neither any permanent nor any elaborate provision in this regard. So all these things, that how will you get this citizenship, how will you, in what conditions you can lose your citizenship, all these concepts, the constitution says that parliament will frame a law with that respect. So the constitution only deals with, or it only deals, or it only identifies person who became citizens of India at its commencement. So it only deals with those people who became citizens of India on 26th January 1950. It only deals with that. Right? It does not deal with the problem of how you will become Indian citizen, how you will lose Indian citizen. Nothing is there in the constitution. If a question comes in the parliament, the constitution mentions the following ways in which you can gain India's citizenship. This is wrong. The constitution does not provide any information on that. It leaves it to the mercy of parliament to frame an elaborate law which will contain the method of acquiring Indian citizenship and losing Indian citizenship. So what does the constitution say? The constitution says that 4 categories of people became Indian at its commencement. These 4 categories are, firstly, a person who is domiciled in India, that is Article 5 deals with that. So when India became India, when the constitution was formed, those persons who were domiciled in India, they became Indian citizens. Second is person who have migrated from Pakistan. So all these Hindu and Sikh refugees who migrated from Pakistan became Indian citizens. Thirdly, the persons who migrated to Pakistan but later who returned to India. So there was Nadira Babbar, who is Raj Babbar's wife. Her father, Saddam Zahir, he migrated to Pakistan because that was made for a Muslim country. He was a communist, so he stayed there for a few years, and then he realized that I should better live in secular India than should live in Islamic Pakistan, and he returned back to India. So these people are also those who became India's citizens. And fourth is people who were persons of Indian origin who were residing abroad. So those people who were residing abroad, they were also given an option that if they want to acquire Indian citizenship, they should go to the consulate and acquire the Indian citizenship. Right? Next, move to the very important part of this chapter, which is acquisition of citizenship. That a lot of aspirants get confused on that. How you can acquire citizenship. We'll deal with this. So first way, so this is given by Citizenship Act 1955. The Constitution, as we have discussed earlier, is silent on this. Citizenship Act 1955 mentions 5 ways of acquiring Indian citizenship. 5 ways. So first way is by birth. So those people who were born between 1950 to 1987 were automatically Indian irrespective of the nationality of the parent. So if a US worker was working in India and he became father, then his son would be automatically citizen of India, even though both he and her wife are from US. This thing continued from 1915 to 1987, right? Those people who were born between 1987 to 2004, 3rd December 2004, they would become part of India, they would become citizen of India if either of the parents is an Indian, right? So let's take the example of Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi is born earlier, but I'm just taking an example. Rahul Gandhi's father was an Indian citizen. Rahul Gandhi's mother, when Rahul Gandhi was born, was an Italian citizen. She acquired citizenship later in 1980s. So Rahul Gandhi would be automatically Indian because his father was an Indian. Even if it would have been opposite, like her father would have been from abroad and her mother would have been Indian, even in that case also he would have been an Indian citizen based on by birth criteria. However, those people who were born after 2004, they would become citizen of India if both of their parents are citizens of India, or at least one of the parents is not an illegal migrant to India. Right? He or she should not be an illegal migrant to India. Next method of acquisition of citizenship is by descent. So what do we mean by the descent? It means that based on my descent, my parents, whether I would get citizenship of India or not. So for those people who were born between 1950 to 1992, so before 1992, outside India will be automatically citizen of India if his father was the citizen of India at that time. So if I am born in US and my father is an Indian and I am born before 1982, then I would be automatically Indian citizen without any registration and without any information to Indian body or Indian Republic. Second is after 1982, between 1982 and 2004, if I am born, then if either of the parents is a citizen of India, I will be an Indian. So in this clause, it's only father. But after 1982 to 2004, either of my parents, if is Indian, then I will be automatically an Indian. 2004 and beyond, like if I'm born after 2004, then the criteria is little strict. So it abolishes this thing that you will be automatically become Indian citizen if either of your parents are an Indian. Because now what you have to do is that after a baby is born, his birth should be registered at an Indian consulate in that country within the first 1 year of his birth. So if my kid is born in 2018, this date, which is the 2nd April, then before 2nd April 2019, I will have to register him in the Indian consulate that he is born. Only then he will acquire Indian citizenship. If I don't go to the Indian consulate, my kid would not get the facility of becoming an Indian citizen. Right? Third is by registration. A lot of people get confused between citizenship by registration and citizenship by naturalization. They both look similar because in both cases you have to stay a few years in India and then you get the Indian citizenship. But there is a very important difference between citizenship by registration and citizenship by naturalization. So in case of citizenship by registration, it is generally for those people who were once the citizenship or who were once the citizens of India, right? So suppose I was born as an Indian and I went to US for my higher studies. I stayed in US for 10 years, 15 years. I acquired this citizenship. Then I come back to India because at that time I'm not an Indian citizen, I'm Indian, but I was once an Indian citizen. So the time period that I'll stay in India, and with that, if I'll get the citizenship, I will not get the method will not be citizenship by naturalization. It will be citizenship by registration. Right? Compare it with Sonia Gandhi or Jean Grace. They were never citizens of India. They were born in Italy, they were Italian citizenship, they were Italians. For them, if they will get citizenship, that matter would be naturalization. Right? So this method is for people of OCI or person of Indian origin. This method is for them. Right? So if a PIO or a OCI wants in OCI is overseas citizen of India, PIO is person of Indian origin. I will explain the difference in the in later part of this chapter. So if they acquire citizenship of India, that method would be called as by registration. While a complete foreigner who has never had any links with India, if he or she acquires Indian citizenship, then that method is called as by naturalization. That is the difference between citizenship by registration and citizenship by naturalization. So what does the 5055 Act says? So the Act says that central government can gives citizenship to any person on application if he is a person of Indian origin who is ordinary resident of India for 7 years. Right? Or if he is a OCI, overseas citizen of India, he should be ordinary resident of India from last 5 years. Or if somebody is married to citizen of India and is an ordinary resident or spouse, same criteria, ordinary resident from last 7 years. Or those people who are minor children of person who are citizens of India. right? So what do we mean by ordinary resident? Ordinary resident is person who is living in India throughout the period of last 12 months. That is known as ordinary resident. Now we come to fourth part, which is citizenship by nationalization. Now, there are some criteria by the 55 Act which says that only following people could get India's citizenship by this method, which is citizenship by nationalization. First of all, he should not be a citizen of any country where Indians are prevented from becoming citizens. So, if somebody is from Saudi Arabia, because in Saudi Arabia you cannot become the citizen even if you are staying for 15 years. So Saudi person who will be in India for 8, 9 or 10 years, he would still can't apply for the citizenship because we cannot become citizens of their country. Second criteria is that he has renounced the citizenship of the other country. We don't allow dual citizenship. We don't have the concept of dual citizenship. Therefore, he should renounce the citizenship of that country. Thirdly, he should have knowledge of language specified in the 8th schedule. Fourthly, from the last 14 years, he is staying in India of last 14 years, at least 11 years, he should have been staying in India. Right? And sixthly, he is rendered in India or has been in service of government of India throughout the period of last 12 months. So these are the criteria on the basis of you get citizenship based on nationalization, but all these conditions are waived if he has rendered any distinguished service to India. So if he has done something exemplary great for India, then the government of India can waive all the condition and say, even though you have been staying in India for 3 months, we'll give you this citizenship. Right? Next is the last way we can get our citizenship, which is the by incorporation of territory. So suppose some part is not part of India, but later it became part of India, then automatically we become citizen, or the people of that area become citizen of India. So Goa, Daman and Diu, Pondicherry, they were not part of India when India became independent. But later, when we acquired these territories, they all the citizens of Goa, Daman and Diu, Pondicherry, they automatically became part of India, or they became Indian citizens. Next, we will move into his loss of citizenship. Again, Constitution does not mention anything about this. 1955 Act mentions the methods of loss of citizenship. So first is by renunciation. So suppose I became the citizen of US. I am getting US citizenship, and therefore I myself voluntarily renounces the Indian citizen. I say that no more I want to be part of India. No more I want to be Indian citizen, right? So in that case, if that is the way, then it is called as by renunciation. However, if there is any war with another country, then government can withhold this matter. Government can say that we are at war with this country, and therefore, for next 1 year, we are withholding a citizenship. You continue to remain Indian citizen. One basic fact is that when somebody renounces his citizenship, then automatically the minor child of that person also automatically becomes non-citizen. So if I renounces my Indian citizenship, I have my two kids who are 9 or 12, then those two kids will also automatically become non-Indian. But there is one basic trivia is that when they become 18-year-old, then they have the option of acquiring Indian citizenship back, because the decision was not taken by themselves, it's taken by their parents. Therefore, once they cross 18, they are again given an option to come back to Indian citizenship. Second method is by termination. Now this means that when an Indian acquires citizenship of any country, my citizenship here automatically terminates. You don't need to inform anyone. You can, if you become citizen of Britain, automatically, because we don't have the concept of dual citizenship as told earlier. So when I become citizen of UK, automatically my Indian citizenship expires. It terminates. Right? Third method is by deprivation or by deprivation. Now in this case, there is compulsory termination of citizenship by the government. The government here compulsorily says that you no more you are an Indian citizen. So there are 4 methods of that. There are 4 cases in which this applies. First is when you have acquired the citizenship by fraud. Second method is when you have shown disloyalty toward Constitution of India. Third method is when you have communicated with enemy or you have shared any information which is harmful to India during the war. 2 years and more. Right? So if I have acquired my citizenship by naturalization method, and within 5 years of that acquisition, if I am involved in any crime in any country, even in US if you are involved in that, for a crime where you are imprisoned by more than 2 years, then you are automatically renounced. So this ends this thing. So let's move to the last part of this chapter, which is again a very important part. Difference between PIO, OCI and NRI. So in 2016, the government has merged the PIO and the OCI schemes because government wanted, because PIO were having a lot of problems. But we should know the difference between them, PIO and the OCI. So PIO are the people who have migrated abroad long back. So those people who are in West Indies, those people who are in Fiji, who are in Mauritius, who are in Suriname, these people migrated like more than 100 years back. Mostly they are considered as people of Indian origin, PIO. Right? And OCI, so the overseas citizens of India, they are more recent migrants. Generally, they are those people who were once the citizens of India, but now with time they have migrated to, or they have migrated later or near, like in last 2-3 decades, to abroad. So they are generally considered as OCI or overseas citizen of India. So a lot of people have this confusion that a lot of them are probably, even I had the confusion 5 years back, 6 years back. I thought that people who are overseas citizens of India, they are holding dual nationality, but they are not holding dual nationality. This term is a misnomer because OCI is not technically means that you will have two passports, that you are equal to, because we don't have the concept of dual citizenship. It's just that you will get a lifelong visa free entry to India. Lifelong visa free entry. You don't require any visa. That proper small passport that you will have would contain the visa for life for India. So you can come to India anytime you want without applying in the Indian embassy, right? So that is what is an OCI, lifelong visa. But for PIO, they only get visa for 15 years. After 15 years, they again have to renew their card, right? So all the foreign citizens would be part of PIO except people from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, China, India, Iran, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. So all the neighboring countries, only they, because if they would be this them, then most of them will remain in India because of a lot of poverty in their country, right? That is why this option is for all the citizens of any country except these 7-8 countries which I have mentioned. In case of OCI, Pakistan and Bangladeshi people, they are not allowed to get that, right? Second difference is that, which the rule says, is that in case of PIO, any foreign citizen whose parents or grandparents were once or born or were permanent resident of India, then they would be eligible for a PIO card. Right? In case of OCI, the rule says that a foreign national who is eligible to become citizen of India in 1950 or was Indian citizen at any time of his life could apply under the OCI category. Right? Anyone who was eligible to become Indian citizen in 1950 or who was once Indian citizen could apply for the OCI card. Now, what are the facilities which people from OCI get? So they get a lifelong visa, as we have mentioned, while these people get a visa for 15 years only. Second thing is that when a foreign national comes to India, he has to report to the foreign representative office. So in case of PIO, he can stay in India till 180 days without informing or without registering itself in the FRO office, right? But if he stays more than 180 days, he will have to register himself in the FRO office, and it's a big line, bit skewed. It's not very convenient. A lot of people are there. But in case of OCI, he is exempted from this FRO registration, right? Now, next thing is how can they get citizenship? This we have again discussed, that they get citizenship through registration method. But in case of OCI, he has to be only normal or ordinary resident of India for 5 years, and in last 1 year he should have continuously remained in India. But in case of PIO, he should have been ordinary resident of India from last 7 years. So here also the OCI people get a benefit. Except that the OCI people in India can acquire property, they can invest everywhere except the agriculture properties. So they cannot buy agriculture farmland in India. PPI also, they also get all the other facilities which are given to NRI. Right? So in 2016 they have merged the scheme. Now a person with PIO could apply for an OCI card. Right? Now third concept is NRI. When people say that I am an NRI, it does not mean that he is a citizen of US. It means that he stays right now in US. So if I go to US for my studies and I stay in US for more than 183 days in a year, I am an NRI, right? I am an NRI. I am not the citizen of USA. I am the citizen of India, but I am residing in US right now. If I'm working there, I'm paying tax there. So it's more of an economic definition, right? So NRIs can do everything. They can vote, they can acquire properties, they can give IS, they can do everything which a citizen of India can do. Everything they can do. Because they are citizen of India in all respects, except that they don't pay taxes in India. They pay taxes in US. So this ends the third chapter, which is the citizenship chapter.